Hi, I thought I'd do a little video. Recently, I watched a debate with Alex O'Connor, who's a pretty well-known atheist, and really, I love his vibe. I love he's not a name caller. I really get tired of that. So, anyway, but he was bringing up animal suffering as a reason why the existence of God doesn't seem likely to him. The fact that there could be so much suffering for animals. And honestly, I don't know why we never talk about children anymore. Children are kind of like animals are the place where our culture, our American culture, and a lot of the Western cultures have gone in terms of our sympathies. But I just wanted to talk about this animal suffering thing because I didn't realize it was a deal. And then I've since read and listened to lots of people's thoughts about animal suffering. So I just thought I'd throw my thoughts in there about animal suffering. And one of the things that I think has to be brought up first is that I believe, so there has to be choice. And like I believe that animals have spirits and that they have, like we would call it a soul, a body, an animal body and an animal spirit that God created. They're his creation just like we're his creation. And so they'll be resurrected after this life. And so they're part of his creation that will be perfected in the atonement of Jesus Christ. And Christ didn't have to atone for the animals because they didn't sin. But what's interesting is to think about the fact that when Adam and Eve ate that fruit and entered into a fallen existence, the whole earth fell with them. So God said, and I love this, I'm a big fan of Adam and Eve, as you can tell from my videos, but so God comes, they eat the fruit, God comes and he says, he says, Adam, I'm going to curse the earth for your sake, and it's going to bring thorns and thistles, and it's not going to bring forth fruit spontaneously and flowers and all the things that it has been producing. So originally the earth was created and it was all good. I would say it was probably perfect because God doesn't create imperfect things. That just doesn't make sense to me that he would have created a perfect earth for them to live on. They were perfect, innocent souls. But when they're deceived by Satan and they choose to disobey God, then God told them if they ate the fruit, they would die, right? And they don't die that day. But their disobedience, God curses the earth and they are now susceptible to death and everything else on the planet. Sorry, this is bothering me, that reflection. So anyway, so they are susceptible to death and the earth is basically repressed from bringing forth all the things that it would like to bring forth to them, and it was designed to, and it initially did. And Adam's got to work now to earn his bread. And in this fact, like as you're reading Genesis, it says that the animals were supposed to eat the green things of the field. Well, I would assume that with the fall of the planet, the green things became more sparse and the animals would have adapted to their situation. And I think that's where the carnivore state came from. And I know that there's different mouths and different teeth and different things, but like in terms of this story, that the animals fell with man. And what I think is so interesting is that God, before the fall, God gives Adam and Eve dominion over the animals. He says, have dominion over the fowls of the air and the fish of the sea and the cattle and the other animals and just all the animals. Okay. You're basically in charge of, I'm going to make you the steward over these animals, have dominion. But when you have dominion over something, it also means that you're accountable for them. So Adam and Eve, in falling, they brought the whole animal existence down to the new fallen level where there was death. And there was suffering. Adam and Eve are suffering now, and animals are suffering because of Adam and Eve. So So how can that be fair if these animals that God creates and sets going, how can that be fair? So, because not all this animal suffering is caused by you and me or by individual people, but in a sense, it is all caused by us because of Adam and Eve. So the only thing that I think the key point here is that there had to be a pre-existence. There had to be an agreement by these animals to come and to live on the earth in its fallen state. They had to know what they were getting into. Because animals live by their instincts, and animals are, they're obedient to the order that God created them in. So if you have an animal that's, very hateful towards humans, it's usually because humans have been abusive to the animal. But in most cases, the animals don't really like people, or they are domesticated, and so they're used to people, right? So I just wanted to say that I believe that animals are disciples of God. They follow God. They obey His commandments. They do what He put them here to do, and what He put them here to do was to help Him. Now, how do animals help God? So if God's goal is the deification or the maturation of His children. So let's say that God, and this is what I believe, so maybe you don't believe this, but if you are a child of God, which I believe that I'm a child of God, and every other human is a child of God, not a creation, but a child of God. Our spirits are children of Heavenly Father. And He puts us here so that we can learn to become like Him. So we can, because we're a species. And I don't know all the details, but I do know that we are supposed to become like Him. We're supposed to follow Him. Jesus Christ said, "Follow me, keep my commandments." He said, if you want to know if you want to know if my commandments are of God, then do it, try it. It's a very interactive experience on this planet. Okay, so He put us here to learn, and the animals are part of God's team to help us. So animals provide so many things for human beings, especially the domesticated animals, but all the animals provide beauty, and they provide a threat, in some cases, predatory animals. They provide, they're part of ecosystems that make land inhabitable for people. Like in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have the Word of Wisdom, which tells us that we should eat meat sparingly. It talks about eating meat in time of famine, or winter, or when there's not a lot of other foods. And not everybody particularly pays attention to that part, because they pay more attention to not drinking alcohol or smoking and doing that kind of thing. They pay more attention to the knots usually. But he says, it pleases me if you don't eat them. Meaning, don't take advantage of the animals, because the animals are on my team. But in the same set of scriptures in Doctrine and Covenants 49, he expresses his disapproval of the idea of being a vegetarian. So this is super interesting. Like, how's the balance of that? And what I think is that God put the animals here to help Him to bring about the salvation and the maturation of His children, so that we could come back and live with Him in His society. And meaning as his adult children. Okay, so He's always going to be our Father. We're never going to be better than Him, but at the same time, He doesn't want us to grow up to be pawns. So He wants us to grow up and have the same, have the capabilities that He gave to us as His children. So, as our Father. So the animals help keep his children alive in times of starvation and need. The animals teach his children compassion because mankind needs a lot of the association we have with our domesticated animals. They keep us alive. We keep them alive. We learned compassion. We basically show if we are going to be good stewards of the things that God has given us by caring for animals and caring for each other. Likewise, caring for people that have disabilities that need us, and they can't give back to us in the regular ways that we also, the tit for tat way. It's just really interesting. This life is just totally planned to the nines to be able to find out what's really in our souls. Are we going to be kind and good and compassionate and generous and loving and introspective? All those things. Are we going to be courageous in the face of things that we see that are going wrong? So our whole world is discernment. Good from evil, right? Truth from error, wickedness versus righteousness. Everywhere we look, there's the juxtaposition of these two things, or the yin and yang. The negative. Yin and yang is more sexual, but the balance of light and darkness. So just think about this in animal suffering. If the animals are God's creations that existed with him before he created this earth or world, and they are committed to God, and they come down here of their own accord, he sends them here, and they fulfill their mission here. They multiply, they replenish, they beautify the earth, they provide food and amazing companionship and stability. Just think of just the wool that sheep provide, and the stability that has provided for mankind for the whole history of people. There's just a very amazing interactive experience that we have with animals. So if they chose to come here and they fell with us, almost in the same sacrificial way that Christ falls because we fell. We fell, Christ came to fix our fall. And because he came to fix our fall, he suffered. And he suffered everything that any human will ever suffer. And the animals too suffer with us and for us in so many instances, and they keep us alive so that we can complete the task that God gave us to complete, to learn to be like him. And when we die, mankind will be held accountable for the treatment that we have of animals. And their suffering will not be unrewarded, because there's a third act to this play. So there's a first act where all the preparation is happening, and God kicks. So everybody that agreed to God's plan has come to this earth, but Satan, or the dragon, and a third of the hosts of heaven were kicked out of heaven because they rebelled against God's plan. They didn't want to do things how God wanted them to do them. So he kicks them out. Then he creates the earth. And so already this rebellious force is established and set aside, and they come to the earth, and that's where they have as much dominion as they can possibly have. And they resist everything that God has to do on this planet because they want to have revenge for getting kicked out. And they hate the people that have chosen to do God's plan because we have bodies. So maybe another time I'll talk about bodies. The combination of a spirit and eternal element, which is our bodies. The things that our bodies are made out of are eternal. And the keeping them alive, that will happen after this life in the resurrection. But that is a joyful thing. And it's kind of awesome to think about animals having joy. If you've ever seen an otter or a chimpanzee or any animal that cares for its young, like just the otters especially, where the mothers float around on the lakes and they just hold their babies on their chests, and they just, or the pandas, or the chickens when they cover their chicks. There is joy in the creation of life, and the animals participate in that creation with us, and they do a great job of what they do. So that's my thoughts on animal suffering. So just in summary, there has to be a chance for the animals to choose to come. They choose to come in the premortal existence. Then they come to this life. They live with us. They serve us. They suffer with us. And when they die, they're resurrected and rewarded for their help that they offered to God the Father in doing this. And they are symbolic of Jesus Christ. And it's so interesting to me that Jesus Christ chose to be symbolized as the lamb and the lion, never as the warrior or the sage or the doctor. He's symbolized mainly, sometimes the king, but he's symbolized mainly as the lamb and the lion, giving homage to the animals that also sacrifice their lives in many cases to help us. And so, So like for me, animal suffering, although we hate to hear about it and we hate to think about it, we're all suffering, and nobody suffered more than Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ suffered cumulatively for every person. So there's nothing that God asks the animals to do that Christ doesn't also do. So, amen.